Climate Prediction Center at the National Weather Service projects December could be warmer than usual in Nebraska with above or below normal precipitation. The one-month outlook for December was released this week. Parts of Nebraska could use moisture to close out the month. The latest U.S. drought monitor shows nearly 11% of the state in D1 to D4 conditions, the most since May 2015. The majority of that 11% is categorized in moderate or D1 drought. Thursday morning, we talked with Nebraska Extension State Climatologist Martha Shulski to discuss the weather outlook. We started by asking about changes in this week's drought monitor.
So in the drought monitor this week, we did have an increase of drought conditions, and those were kind of creeping up from Kansas and Colorado. We've seen an increase in drought conditions around Nebraska and within Nebraska, and particularly in the Southwest and the Panhandle.
Can you describe which area of the state specifically is, I guess, worst off?
Right, so we're still seeing a small hot spot centered right around Kearney County, and that's been in the drought monitor for about 3 months now. And then in the Southwest and in the Panhandle, we're seeing D1 start to creep in that area.
Let's look at what we could expect for December and then past December. So the CPC's outlook for December shows what?
So it shows an increased chance for warmer than normal temperatures for Nebraska and for a pretty large area south of Nebraska and west of Nebraska. In terms of precipitation, there's equal chances locally. There's increased chance for wetness kind of northwest of Nebraska and in the Great Lakes area. So that's what the outlooks are for December in particular.
What about the seasonal outlooks?
So for the seasonal outlooks, it's interesting. Nebraska kind of lies in this zone in between an increased chance for cooler and wetter to our north and warmer and drier to our south. And that's a pretty typical La Nina signature, which is what we're currently in right now, which is kind of a weak La Nina area. And so one thing that we'll really be keeping an eye on is the Arctic oscillation. And so that determines kind of how strong the circulation is around the Arctic. And when it weakens, we have an increased chance for kind of cold air outbreaks. And so we'll be watching to keep an eye on what's that Arctic oscillation doing. Do we have increased chance for these cold air outbreaks and snow conditions?
Can you go a little bit further on where we are in La Nina, just how strong it is and why that matters?
Yes, so we are technically in a weak La Nina pattern, and so that's a cooling of the waters in the equatorial Pacific. So it's a relatively small cold pool that's there right now with warmer waters surrounding it. Circulation conditions in the atmosphere are indicating also a weak La Nina, and the predictions going into the future are for it's a high likelihood to transition to neutral conditions by the end of winter. So we'll be keeping an eye to see does that play out.
November has felt warmer than normal. Is that accurate?
That is true. If you look at the data, we're actually a pretty far departure from normal in the 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit range. And in fact, if you go back and look at the beginning of the year, so January to date, we've been quite warm, and that's true for the U.S. as a whole and globally. These temperatures just kind of keep marching up.